And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. And joining me, of course, is my co-host, Matt Dudek.
Hey there, everybody.
Matt, you can find on Twitter at Horizon Matt, and you can find the podcast on Twitter as well at Horizon RT. You can find us on Facebook at Horizon Roundtable. You can find episodes and content at our website, horizonroundtable.com. And of course, you can follow us and subscribe to us wherever podcasts are available. And Matt, I know our season was cut short a little bit, but I guess now is as good a time as any to welcome Fort Wayne fans.
Screw it. Fort Wayne's in. Let's
Fort
do
Wayne
it.
Yes, and to celebrate this, we have brought on John Nolan, who is now if I understand this correctly, you do the home TV broadcast for Fort Wayne, correct?
Hey, Bob. Hey, Matt. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited for Purdue Fort Wayne to be joining the Horizon League and,
Yes.
as a result, getting to tune into your podcast more regularly. And, I'm really lucky to have a chance to be the Purdue Fort Wayne men's basketball TV play-by-play voice. Occasionally, I'll fill in on the radio for some of the road trips. But, the Mastodons have all of their games broadcast through, in years past, I have had all their games broadcast throughout the state of Indiana. For Comcast subscribers. And now going forward, we'll also have our games like the rest of the Horizon League broadcast via Watch ESPN.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because I know that that's an interesting dynamic, because I know some of the other teams within the Horizon League have that dynamic where they have a radio voice, and then they also have somebody doing the TV games. One such example being Detroit Mercy. We've obviously had the radio voice Dan Hasty on. Ironically, next week we're going to have Jerry Miato, their TV voice, on. So it's the dynamic we should be used to in the Horizon League, because I know there's a few schools that do it that way. And you also are involved, or would be if things were actually, if sports are being played, you're actually involved in play-by-play on a couple of other sports, if you'd like to share that with everyone.
Yeah, so I'm also the play-by-play voice of Fort Wayne's minor league baseball team, the Tin Caps, who are the Padres single-A team in the Midwest League. And you mentioned Dan Hasty, the voice of Detroit Mercy men's basketball. He also doubles up calling West Michigan Whitecaps games.
He does.
So looking forward to getting to work alongside Dan in other capacity now. And coincidentally, the footprint of the Horizon League really matches the footprint of the Midwest League. So even though I haven't been to every campus around the conference yet, I have pretty much visited every city that has a Horizon League team, sometimes as a result of traveling in the Midwest League. And I also broadcast games for Fort Wayne's NBA G League affiliate with the Indiana Pacers, the Mad Ants, to some high school football and basketball, try to stay busy that way. And by the way, just going back to what you were referencing, the radio voice for the Mastodons, his name is Brett Rump, and he'd be a good one for hardcore Horizon League fans to follow. He's at Brett Rump Sports, and he also hosts a local sports talk show Monday through Friday here in Fort Wayne on the ESPN radio affiliate that carries Purdue Fort Wayne men's basketball. And so Brett, he's a great ambassador for Mastodons basketball, and now going forward, the Horizon League itself. In the past, and this applies really to all of us, we tried to carry the flag for the Summit League around here, but that was just a bit of a harder sell, since the closest school in recent years was about 6 hours away there in Western Illinois. So now I think we're looking forward to having the competition that we talk about in the Horizon League, just being so much more regionally based, places where people here in Fort Wayne perhaps went to school themselves, or, they've got a family that are alums or fans of fellow Horizon League schools. So
Sure.
Just that local connection.
John, I can tell you
a long way.
As an Oakland fan, I can tell you that making the transition from Summit to Horizon is wonderful. You guys will love the lack of travel and just the footprint in general. Like you said, it's really nice to get out of the Summit from a travel standpoint alone, and just having that, that regional action there. That's great.
Yeah, Oakland and IUPUI, obviously, the clear examples of making this transition. And yeah, I was just talking about it from the standpoint of these schools resonating with the Purdue Fort Wayne fan base, but obviously in terms of the real value, I mean, financially, not having to pay as much for all athletic programs to be traveling, whereas in the Summit League, routinely making trips out to the Dakotas and Denver and Omaha, which for the men's basketball or women's basketball team, at least they were able to fly. Now, in some ways, I'm not sure what's better when you have to make multiple connecting flights and do that during the winter time where inevitably there are travel delays, or, other sports like baseball and softball having to bus those trips, which are literally over 12 hours in a lot of cases. So just not ideal yet. That said, the Summit League was a great first conference home for Purdue Fort Wayne, which has only been Division I since around 2001. So, and not to mention from a basketball standpoint, on the men's side and women's side, really strong competition. But for multiple reasons, the Horizon League is just a much better fit for the Mastodons. And so there's a lot of positive momentum and excitement around that move.
Before we get into, obviously, what that's going to mean for you guys and what we can expect, my question is for you personally, do you have a catchphrase or anything that we can look forward to?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those are
no, if you guys have any ideas, please feel free to pass them along. I have not necessarily developed any unique catchphrases in any sport that I call it, including basketball. So if you've got any ideas, I'll try to subtly work them in and give you guys credit.
Okay. Well, Matt, we have our mission, Matt.
There it is. It's Horizon fans. There it is. I mean, some of these fans would probably rather you not have one. They get all over Neil Rulfer, of course, and Bang Bang guy over at YSU. They hate that one. So some fans would appreciate you not having one, but I think it's all right.
I'm personally holding out by the power of Grayskull. You have to work that in somehow.
I'm sorry, by the power of what?
By the power of Grayskull.
Bob's old.
I'm
it's an old cartoon reference.
Okay, we'll workshop that.
No.
But yeah, to fill fans in just a little bit about myself, I actually grew up in New Jersey, outside of New York City, and so by influences, watching basketball growing up, I mean these guys are national too, but the TV voice of the New Jersey Nets, now Brooklyn Nets, Ian Eagle. He's one of my broadcasting role models, and Mike Breen calling Knicks games, even Marv Albert. So maybe you hear an Ian Eagle Van Jam, or a Mike Breen puts it in, bang, and Marv Albert with stuff like that.
Yeah. So, those are definitely good role models to have, especially on the catchphrase side. So, yeah. One other question I have, obviously, since things are kind of at a lull, obviously because of the pandemic and everything. How have you been keeping yourself busy? I know others have. I know other broadcasting voices have lend their voices to other things, like, for example, Neil Rule doing Mail Time. I believe I saw you doing game-winning shots for backyard basketball games on your Twitter account recently.
Yep, I've teamed up with the Mastodons head coach, Jon Coffman. He's at Coach Coffman on Twitter, a really good follow because he shows his human side, his personality and stuff that he does with his family. It's not just X's and O's basketball. And creative idea he had. First off, for the Fort Wayne community, he started a hashtag FW Driveway Shooting Challenge. So Coach Coffman, he has two kids, including a son, Tommy, who is around 5th grade. And so, loves getting outside and playing, especially now to stay active. And so being that Coach Coffman, who normally would be on the road nonstop from a recruiting standpoint at this period, since he's at home, he and Tommy have been spending a lot of time shooting on their hoop in the backyard. And so they've put out a challenge to see who around the community can try to keep up and push each other to get up as many shots as possible so that young kids, and I think it's limited to 6th grade and younger to avoid any potential NCAA violations. I got to check with the athletic department to make sure you're in the clear there. But yeah, for kids in the community to keep getting shots up, keep getting better. And then as a spin-off of that, we've got hashtag Don's Game Winner, where fans are sending clips to me of reenacting last-second shots. And so it's been fun for me to try to stay sharp from the broadcasting side of things, and hopefully kids are having some amusement with these dramatic calls. And since we're in Indiana, I've even thrown in some background noise from the closing seconds of Hoosiers, the classic movie.
There you go. So let's just kind of get into let's jump into kind of Purdue Fort Wayne, and I keep saying and I guess that requires a little bit of explanation for some of us who, well, not necessarily, for some folks who are used to calling them IP Fort Wayne. A couple years ago, as I understand it, they is now just Purdue Fort Wayne. Indiana is no longer involved in the equation.
Yeah, no fault of anyone out there who is confused or has had a tough time keeping up. Yes, the school for over 50 years was conjointly run by Indiana University and Purdue University. Mm-hmm. So it was known as IPFW. Mm-hmm. Then, the university itself formerly changed its official name to simply Purdue Fort Wayne a couple of years ago. And then there was sort of an interim where the athletic department was branded as simply Fort Wayne. From the basketball side of things, it really has been amazing that Coach Coffman and his staff have been able to continue to recruit at the level that they were, despite the challenge of when you're a high school kid and you've got kids that you're recruiting that have offers from all over the place. That branding actually is really important, and so they had to go through the name changes multiple times. But now, in addition to the Horizon League partnership, there's more stability on campus, knowing that for the long haul now it'll be Purdue Fort Wayne, and don't have to worry about that potentially changing. I mean, even the colors did change because the school had been blue and white for many years, and now has switched to black and gold like Purdue, though there still is an accent of blue that has been carried over.
Sure. More importantly, have we kept the Mastodon, the actual mascot that was there 10 years ago when Oakland was in the conference? Because that was a great costume.
Yeah, well, I think Don's had some improvements over the years too, but the Mastodon mascot, Don, just besides wearing black and gold with a little bit of blue these days, I think he's been spiffed up, but at his core, still the same.
All right, that's important because again, it was one of my favorites back in the Summit days. So
I know recently, one of the social media memes that was going around was like how people looked on March 1st versus April 1st with all that's been going on in the world, and I think they did dig up an old looking version of Don, and compared to the present day though, now I think he's looking better.
I feel like the old Don costume was like Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street, and there's probably like 4 people in there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I made that up. I think he's gotten a little bit. He's been spending more time in the weight room. Is a stronger version than perhaps about a decade or so ago.
There you go. So I actually want to. Jon Coffman, obviously the head coach. I want to say I know a little bit about him. So if you can kind of shed a little light on kind of, Jon Coffman, what, his overall coaching style. I know his, in recent years, his claim to fame has been the guy who was who coached Fort Wayne to beating Indiana. I do remember that. Very vividly, but tell us a little bit about kind of how long he's been. I believe he's in his 6th season at Fort Wayne. And from what it looks like, he's been definitely a part of putting a real program together over at the school.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can't say enough about Jon Coffman, the coach or the person. He's someone who I feel really fortunate to have been able to spend time around here over these last half dozen years, and so he'll be going into his 7th year as the head coach. Spent the previous couple of years as an assistant under Tony Jasic. Tony Jasic, after being a part of the rise of the Mastodons program, he left for Jacksonville, where he's still the head coach there. But for Coach Coffman, this is his first Division I head coaching job. A guy who really paid his dues, about 20 years as an assistant coach in college basketball, starting at the Division III level, eventually working his way up to Stetson University, where he was a longtime assistant there down in DeLand, Florida. Had spent multiple years at Colgate in the central New York area before coming to Fort Wayne and now calling this home. And a cool fact about Coach Coffman is that his better half, his wife Tracy, she's actually a head coach too. She is a head coach at a local university over in Northwest Ohio, where she's a softball coach. And so what a dynamic it is there to have 2 head coaches. And then, like I said, they have 2 kids. So a running joke for them is that in their house, it's always game day because, whether it's in the wintertime with basketball or come springtime for softball, there's nearly always a game on the calendar. And so a couple years back, they got a family dog, and they named their dog Game Day. So now, and it's a really cute cockapoo. And so, now it's literally always game day there for the Coffmans. And under Coach Coffman, now actually this past year for Horizon League fans, as they kind of gear up for having the Dons in the mix now, you almost want to disregard this past year, which was the first time the Mastodons didn't have a winning season after a run of 6 consecutive winning campaigns, and they had 5 consecutive postseason appearances. Along the way, there was one year where they passed up on the chance to be in the CIT, but won a Summit League regular season title, played in the NIT. And again, to keep the perspective of, this is a program that only became Division I in 2001, was without a conference for several years. So it was a gradual process to build the program up to where it is now. You mentioned an upset over IU. That was back in 2016 when the Hoosiers were ranked 3rd in the country. And then it was actually back-to-back years that the Mastodons upset the Hoosiers, because then they did it the following year at Assembly Hall. But yeah, for fans who kind of just want to get a feel for the personality and character of Coach Coffman, actually Big Ten Network, you can still find it on YouTube. They had posted a post-game interview that Coach Coffman did after that epic upset of the 3rd-ranked Hoosiers. And it right there actually just gives you a great sense of the type of person that Coach Coffman is, because, there's a moment where you could just be pounding your chest and really kind of seeking the attention. But instead, he made sure to credit Coach Crean from IU at the time for the fact that they were willing to schedule the Mastodons and what it meant for the Fort Wayne community, because that initial upset was actually played in Fort Wayne at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum. There were 10 to 12,000 fans who filled up the arena. That was as big of an event as I've experienced in my time in Fort Wayne. And shoot, I think people will tell you over the last several decades, there's really not been a bigger event in the Summit City than that, because there are so many longtime Hoosiers fans here. And for that matter too, in that interview, he was holding his son Tommy in his arms, because he's definitely a dedicated family man too, and just has a great sense of humor, and is someone who's super detail oriented, and that has really been the backbone of the success for the program over the last 6 years with him as the head coach.
You mentioned the Coliseum. Is that where Fort Wayne's playing most of their games now? I know I've been to a couple Oakland Fort Wayne games back in the day there. But don't they use two different gyms? Like, what's the story with all that? Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, so the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum, which has a lot of history to it, you go back to the early days of the NBA, and the Pistons, before moving to Detroit, actually started in Fort Wayne as the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons, and so they played in two of the early NBA finals. The Coliseum actually hosted the third ever NBA All-Star game back in the 50s. Drawing a blank right now on who. I know Bob Cousy played in that game, and it was George Mikan who was the MVP. There we go, of that game. And so that's where the Mastodons play the vast majority of their home games. It's basically across the street from campus, and the Coliseum is also the home of the Fort Wayne Mad Ants G League team, as well as the Fort Wayne Comets of the ECHL, and the Comets. They're one of the most successful minor league hockey teams in the entire country. And, it's a big building that hosts concerts and lots of conventions and other events too. And it's basically across the street from campus. On campus, Purdue Fort Wayne has the Gate Center. That's much more of an intimate atmosphere with a capacity of just around 2,000 or so. But yeah, in recent years, the Dons have played the vast majority of their games at the Coliseum, and I think that'll be the case again going forward. And who knows? I think that could be a candidate to perhaps host a Horizon League tournament down the road. I think it would really be a great fit, geographically centrally located for the league, and that great size too of 10,000 plus.
I didn't know Bob had any. Yeah, it'll be interesting because what you guys.
Sorry,
probably...
I had my microphone muted. Sorry, my bad.
You mentioned the Horizon League tournament. That's an interesting thought because originally we were told that no venue would be used that was somebody's regular gym, but then IUPUI plays in the Farmers Coliseum. What do they call? Whatever they call
Farmers Coliseum. Yes.
Farmers Coliseum, and all of a sudden, the Horizon League tournament was there, and that was a surprise and kind of went against everything we'd been told. So can't rule out that it moves to Fort Wayne. Who knows?
And if I understand it correctly, Fort Wayne was mentioned as a possible place too. At some point in time, I can't remember that was any more than talk or a proposal or anything like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have any inside information there, but actually, I think a couple of years ago, before Purdue Fort Wayne was even officially entering the league, I think there were Horizon League officials who came to tour the Coliseum as the local tourism bureau had put in a bid looking to host it. If you go back, the Summit League had rebranded before that. It was the Mid-Con Conference. And when Valparaiso was a member, Fort Wayne actually hosted that league tournament once or twice. So there is some precedent for the city hosting a conference tournament. And actually, one of the couple of the casualties of our current pandemic is that the Coliseum missed out on getting to host Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in the Division I women's basketball tournament. That was going to be a really cool event, and would have been the second year in a row too to host the Division III men's Final Four. So just when you talk about the standards of the facility, they've hosted NCAA events like that.
Okay, that's always good. So you mentioned that this season was kind of a down season for Fort Wayne. So kind of give us a little bit of tell us a little bit about who they got coming back, and what we can expect, what kind of players we're going to be need to game plan for during the Horizon League season.
Yeah, and I should say it wasn't necessarily a huge shock that the Mastodons did have a little bit of a drop off this past year because they had graduated the best player in program history, Jon Conchar, who then became the first player in program history to play in the NBA. He's on a two-way contract with the Memphis Grizzlies. And after spending the majority of the early part of the season with their G League team in Memphis, he was increasingly gaining minutes with the Grizzlies in the NBA. And so this stoppage has now kind of stymied his momentum there. But that was a lot of fun to see. He had some highlight plays and an upset that they had over the Lakers as one example, and obviously that's an up-and-coming team in the NBA. So a lot of fun to see Jon Conchar representing the Mastodons there, and he was an amazing development story for Purdue Fort Wayne because he had only one other Division I scholarship opportunity coming out of high school in West Chicago, and actually redshirted his first year with the Mastodons because he was a pretty slender guy and put on literally 40 plus pounds of muscle during that redshirt year, and then went on to become an all-league player for 4 years. And for, Horizon League fans who just were keeping a pulse of college basketball over the last 5 or so years, Mike Dahm from South Dakota State was one of the top players and scorers really in NCAA history. And so it just so happened that Conchar and Dahm spent the same 5 years together because they both had redshirted and then had these incredible careers. And so Conchar never wound up as the Summit League Player of the Year because Dahm got that 3 years in a row. Basically, any other point in time, Conchar's probably Player of the Year. Not to mention here, as an aside, the Summit League, I think has some bias towards the Dakota-based schools. The league office is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But I digress.
Absolutely.
I hadn't noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so the Mastodons lost Jon Conchar. Yet that said, now looking ahead, Jared Godfrey was an honorable mention all-league player last year as a sophomore. And he in some ways, he sort of stepped into that Jon Conchar role as being a bigger point guard at 6'5". Jared's from the Atlanta area. And I think one area where you're going to see progress from him next year was that this past year, his first year, having the reins at point guard, he wound up turning the ball over more than the Dons would like to see it, but a guy who could score it and facilitate, had, I believe, multiple double-doubles this past year, plus with his size can crash the glass and rebound too. But, the type of guy that you want leading your team. You go back to when he was younger. He was an Eagle Scout in high school and really steady and poised. And so, he'll have the keys to running the team going forward next year. One player who emerged as one of the top freshmen in the Summit League last year was Deontay Billups. He's from Macomb, Illinois. So that's along the Mississippi River, Quad Cities region. And, Deontay, for a guy who wasn't even recruited by some of the schools like a Western Illinois in his backyard, he was someone who during the non-conference last year came off the bench and then evolved into a starter. And he's really dynamic because, again, around 6'5" or so, I guess the word that comes to mind is bouncy. So he had multiple games with double figures in rebounding, but he can step out and shoot it from three as well. I guess I should point out, before going any further, that some people had given Purdue Fort Wayne the nickname of Three Nation in recent years because prior to this past season, they had spent 4 consecutive years top 15 in the country in three-point shooting as far as threes per game. Some of those years they were in the top 5 in percentage too. And so, that's been a trend across basketball, right? But I think the Mastodons have really embraced that as much as anyone, and they want guys who are able to shoot it 1 through 5. So, in terms of returners for next year, a senior for the Mastodons will be Dylan Carl. He's a 6'11" post player, and he this past year actually did show a back to the basket post game. But his favorite player probably to model himself after in the NBA would be a Kristaps Porzingis. So again, it gives you the image of a guy who can step out and shoot it from 3 too. This past year, another newcomer who's a transfer from Kansas State was Brian Patrick. He was with that Kansas State team that went to the Elite Eight a few years ago. Wasn't necessarily a key piece in the rotation, but, an idea of the talent that he has playing for Bruce Weber. He's as athletic as anyone, can jump out of the gym, can shoot it too. So he'll be back for a senior season. And then some other, rotational guys are coming back. But just this past week, the Mastodons announced 3 new commitments to the program. And so I mean, at this point, time will tell how guys are pieced in, but one who you could probably see being an impact player right away would be a 6'8" wing player named Bobby Planutis. He's transferring in from St. Bonaventure in the Atlantic 10. Last year, he didn't shoot it as well as he had his freshman year when he was actually at St. Mary's in the NEC. He shot like 50% from three as a freshman. And he is able to be immediately eligible as a grad transfer. He's someone who's academically ahead of the game. So he's coming in to join the Mastodons with 2 years of eligibility. A guy who, has the size to play inside, but can, again, stretch the floor. One who, might wind up being a real steal for Purdue Fort Wayne is a 6'8" kid out of Memphis named Jonathan DeJournette, who, according to some rankings, is a top 7 player out of the state of Tennessee. I think I saw that he was recently starting to get some interest, not offers, but interest from the likes of Dayton and Georgetown. So, the fact that the Mastodons were able to secure him is really exciting. He looks, when you see the highlight film of him, he looks like a kid who's still growing into his body, but at 6'8" can run the floor with some pretty impressive athleticism. And then going back to that theme of shooting the ball, they've got a junior college transfer named Demetric Horton, who's coming in from Independence Community College in Kansas. That Jayhawk League is as good as any JUCO league in the country. He shot 43% from three last year, a 6'5" guard who can slash too. So actually, I think it'll be interesting to see how the Mastodons are, it looks like a really deep roster for next year. Another guy who can figure to have an impact would be a transfer who had a sit out last year from Vermont, although originally from Indianapolis. So kind of a homecoming for Rob Petty. He's a really strong post player who I think will help the team out defensively. So this past year, while the shooting numbers were down for the Mastodons, it was actually their top defensive team during Coach Coffman's era, based off of some numbers to evaluate. So it'll be interesting to see how the Mastodons, kind of the mentality that they had down the stretch this past year, where the offense, was not at its usual rate of putting up about 80 points per game. They had more of a commitment on the defensive end and had a quote unquote whatever it takes mantra. So see if they're able to carry over that grittiness on the defensive side. And then if they can kind of have a return to form shooting the ball, I think that would project them to be a contender in the Horizon.
You really answered my question. I was going to ask about, the tempo that they play, but it sounds like they're a pretty up-tempo team. I mean, you talk a lot about shooting the three, so obviously they're, getting into that, but it sounds like they're gonna push the ball and try to score around 80 points a game, which is, fits in pretty well with the Horizon League mold for most of the teams, I would say.
Yeah, definitely a fun brand of basketball. One of the popular lines from Coach Coffman, and if you're tuned into broadcast, a lot of times you can even hear him say it in the background, is get it happy or make it happy. He likes to say, make the ball happy. And, the ball is happy when it's moving side to side, quick ball movement. So again, if you look at Ken Pom numbers from this past year, they would be an outlier compared to previous years under Coach Coffman, where they were playing at one of the faster tempos, in the entire country.
So, obviously, one of the things that, obviously we have, I'm sure you've seen a little bit of kind of the way the Horizon League plays during this past season. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, Fort Wayne played IUPUI, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of that dynamic between those two schools in a minute. But in terms of the way that the Horizon League has it was positioned last season, where do you see Fort Wayne situated in kind of the dynamic of the Horizon League next season? Like I said, last year, for at least for a good chunk of the conference schedule, there was kind of a log jam between about the third place and eighth place teams in the conference. So where do you see Fort Wayne kind of situating into this dynamic next season?
Yeah, really fascinating question. And I still have got to do my homework to look at what everyone else in the league has coming back for next year. But basically, the way I would evaluate it is most recent years, I think the Summit League and the Horizon League have been pretty comparable from a KenPom and an RPI rating perspective. I think the Summit League has actually been a few spots ahead of the Horizon League in most seasons. And Purdue Fort Wayne was consistently towards the top of the standings in the Summit League. Again, had one regular season championship and a couple other finishes in second or third. And doing that despite the challenges, like we talked about before, of sort of being the team that in the misfit as far as the rest of the geographic base that presented its own obstacles and whatnot. So, I mean, I think you can sort of project Purdue Fort Wayne to certainly be the top half of the league team now going forward into the Horizon. And in recent years, Purdue Fort Wayne has played, like you said, IUPUI. They've had some meetings with UIC, Detroit, Mercy, even another one, which fans wouldn't catch this by looking at the schedules, but Purdue Fort Wayne has routinely had a preseason closed-door scrimmage against Youngstown State, so some familiarity with another opponent there. So yeah, I mean and basically when you look back on Purdue Fort Wayne's time in the Summit League and some of the accolades that were collected along the way, like a regular season title, like upsets against Indiana, a Coach of the Year award for Coach Coffman, a Player of the Year. Before John Contra, Max Landis actually won a Player of the Year. He's a guy playing overseas now. The one thing that eluded Purdue Fort Wayne during that run in the Summit League was getting to the Big Dance. They made the championship game, but never got that ticket punch. So I mean, this is a program that has clearly been knocking on the door, really hunting that elusive trip to the NCAA tournament. And no doubt about it. I mean, that is the goal and expectation here going forward for the Mastodons.
Now, Fort Wayne obviously is not going to completely get away from the Summit League. As I understand it, this is going to be the first year of the Horizon League Summit League Challenge. So what advantage is Fort Wayne going to have in that particular set of games? Because as I understand it, I'm not sure kind of how the dynamic of that's going to work, and I don't know who's going to be matched up with who. But what kind of advantage is Fort Wayne going to have as a Horizon League member over some of the other Horizon League members for that particular challenge that you can see?
Yeah, I know, and that will be the case with the Summit League Horizon Challenge coming up this year. An advantage will be that they would have less time than necessary or less time than usual in the non-conference, having to prepare a scouting report, since that'll in all likelihood already be taken care of. Of course, then it goes both ways, where the opponent's already going to know their personnel basically inside and out too. So yeah, that is fun. I mean, as I was talking about, there have been some headaches with the travel of playing Summit League opponents in the past. Not sure yet if they'll have a home date or a road date. But yeah, it is kind of an ironic thing that even as they leave the Summit League, in some way they're still going to have that connection, which again is a good thing too, because Summit League's a really strong basketball league, a lot of respect for programs and coaches over there. So it'll be good to be able to keep that tie in some way.
John, the past couple of years, the Summit's actually been ranked ahead of the Horizon, and like KenPom rankings, that kind of stuff. Just in your perspective, do you think that's accurate? Do you think that this is a step up for Fort Wayne? Is it just the logistical, footprint that we've talked about? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was mentioning that earlier too. I mean, it's been a little bit ahead of the Horizon League, but again, when you look top to bottom, I mean, one thing that really I think is impressive about the Horizon League is the depth of the league and the parity. I mean, I guess looking this past year, maybe an IUPUI and Detroit Mercy didn't quite carry their weight over the full course of the season. But it doesn't strike me, and you guys know a lot better than me, but it doesn't strike me as a league that's necessarily been too top heavy It's still the type of the league where the team that's maybe in the basement has a shot at knocking off whoever's at the top of the standings. Whereas I think the Summit League did tend to have more years than not, and it was a little bit more on the top-heavy side with South Dakota State, North Dakota State, primarily kind of going back and forth as the top dog, and there were a couple of bottom feeders in the Summit League, whereas the Horizon just seems like there's more consistent parity in the conference.
It's always interesting to get, an outside perspective, if you will, even though you're kind of on the inside now, just to see how other people see it.
I mean,
we get jaded.
And what's that?
I just said, as fans here, we get jaded. We're going to sit there and rip on Detroit Mercy and IUPUI for carrying it down, but it's interesting to see the outside perspective.
Well, as I was saying, part of the advantage that the South Dakota States and the North Dakota States had in the Summit League, and to their tremendous credit, is that in some ways those are almost comparable to Big Ten type schools in that they're like the flagship universities for their states, and that's the go-to event for fans there. So they're packing buildings with 5,000 plus fans and having like true, real, distinct home court advantages. Like South Dakota State literally, I think, has had the top home court advantage in the entire country over the last decade or so. If not number one, they are in the same mix as Duke and Kansas and Gonzaga and those really elite national programs. So, and then you throw in that the conference tournament is annually held in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is nearby to South Dakota State's campus and not all that far away for North Dakota State. So the Summit League tournament is not by any means a neutral site venue. Again, it's bigger than their home arena. So it's around 8,000 to 10,000 fans, pretty much all wearing the same color. And it was never Purdue Fort Wayne's color. So yeah, when you kind of look back on the Dons' time there, that was one of the hurdles for trying to get into the big dance, is that the conference tournament entailed significant travel and basically playing road games. And now with the Horizon League tournament in Indianapolis, all of a sudden, one that's just pretty centrally located for all of the Horizon League to have some fan representation, and including for Purdue Fort Wayne. So you're not going to have to sort of be viewing your own conference tournament as some kind of major adversity of playing on the road.
Sure. Obviously you mentioned Indianapolis, and Fort Wayne and IUPUI have obviously played multiple times over the past couple of years since IUPUI has left the Horizon League. Tell us a little about is there going to be some sort of potential in-state kind of rivalry going on between those two schools, or is it just kind of just another game on the schedule at this point?
Well, I would say I think rivalries are a good thing for sports, including college basketball, right? So I wouldn't view rivalry with a poor connotation. I think it's a good thing to have an in-state rivalry. Again, it kind of goes back to the fact that, hey, in a Fort Wayne neighborhood, you could have someone who's a Purdue Fort Wayne alum and their neighbor maybe wanted to get away from school. It's about 2 hours away to go down to IUPUI. So, you could have a friendly rivalry in that sense. And yeah, it's going to be a rivalry too, because like we said, geographically not too far away. So that means you're in some cases probably going after the same recruits. So there's some roots to a rivalry there. Not to mention, there was a history of playing some really competitive, exciting games in recent years. Even go back 2 seasons ago when IUPUI had just joined the Horizon League. They still came to Fort Wayne for a non-conference game, and there was a different level of intensity to it because of that rivalry. And then I think when you talk about rivalries too, like you need characters that sort of fuel rivalries. And truth be told, the Jaguars' previous head coach, Jason Gardner, he definitely did throw gasoline on the fire multiple times. So the fact that he's no longer in the picture probably maybe actually loses some of the edge to the rivalry that had been brewing. Now it's kind of just a new chapter, being conference members again, but in the Horizon League. But I guess just to look back through the history book at it, it was about 4 years ago in a Summit League game when IUPUI won on a buzzer beater. And that was a year when Purdue Fort Wayne actually had a pretty impressive home court winning streak going. And so it was a statement win for IUPUI, which really was towards the bottom of the Summit League there for a while. So it was a big win for them, and kudos to them for getting it. But it was rather bizarre that Coach Gardner at the time chose to his reaction to the buzzer beater was running out to the center court logo and kind of stomping on the Mastodon, which
was he sober?
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I won't touch that one.
You don't have. You don't. I will.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I think it may have been the same season when again there was a game that went down to the final second. Purdue Fort Wayne had a last second shot that could have tied or won the game. Didn't go in, so IUPUI wound up again with, for them, a really big win. And this one, I kid you not, Coach Gardner stood up on the scorers table, and as if that's not bizarre enough in itself, then he stared down the collection of Mastodons fans who had made that trip down to Indy. So, and that was one where I think after the fact, I think there was reprimand from the Summit League or from IUPUI itself, and Coach Gardner put out an apology afterwards. But, stuff like that.
How did we miss this, man?
Well, and John, you actually kind of give us a perfect transition. We're looking for Fort Wayne fans. We do a fan battle royale. Yes. We still need a representative, but are there fans that follow this team pretty crazy? Like, what are we missing? Why can't we find ourselves some Fort Wayne fans?
Yeah, well, I'll definitely make sure to help you out with that. It's a growing fan base because, and just when you look at the context of things, Fort Wayne for many years, when people were picking a favorite college basketball team to root for, they were going with IU or Purdue, especially, when you look at the traditions of those schools under, Coach Knight and Coach Katie. And Purdue Fort Wayne, as I previously said, only became Division I in 2001, and it was taking its lumps there. So it's still a relatively new thing for the fact that not only does Fort Wayne have its own Division I school, but it has a men's basketball team that is beating IU and is, right there in the thick of contention for an NCAA tournament bid. And like I was saying with Coach Coffman, he's such a personable guy. I mean, he has one of his mantras too is actually that he's building the fan base one fan at a time. So, I mean, a good story off that. And like I said, Brett Rump, the radio voice, hosts a local sports talk show. And so, I mean, frankly, Brett probably gives more attention to the Mastodons on his daily 2-hour show than the average host would for a mid-major college basketball team. And as a result, there was apparently someone who, with some level of frequency, would text into the show's text line basically saying, like, nobody cares about Mastodons basketball, stop talking about them. And it got to the point where Coach Coffman actually, because he'll go on the show and as a guest, so he was, aware of the fact that there was someone trolling the show. Coach Coffman, instead of saying, screw you, he actually offered his complimentary tickets to this person. And I think they had a child that they brought. And so sure enough, that guy went and brought his kid to a game, had a really great time, recognizing that in this case, it was a free ticket, but for the average fan, tickets are really affordable. I mean, sure. For like $10 or $12, you can be pretty close to the court. And, it's a family-friendly experience. It's exciting basketball. The fact that, again, the team plays an up-tempo, unselfish style, that just makes it all the more appealing. And you can have someone like Coach Coffman who's willing to, after the game, go around, shake hands, just literally thank fans for coming. And, there was that troll became a fan. I actually had a chance to meet him myself at a game this past season for the first time, where Coach Coffman set it up for this guy's son to take pictures with players on the court after a game. And so, it's just stories like that show the growth of the program, and just more and more community involvement that the whole athletic department is involved with, that is helping to really grow the Mastodons brand, locally and regionally too.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, John, thank you very much for joining us once again. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, fans can follow me on social media I'm at John JOHN _G _Nolan NOLAN, and would love to interact with Horizon League fans from around the conference, and fingers crossed at some point we'll be traveling during the minor league baseball season with the Tin Caps and going to some Horizon League cities.
There you go.
And so maybe hope to catch some fans in advance, but otherwise looking forward to getting to know everyone in the league. Just to share a quick thing, my background as a kid growing up, like I said, I grew up in the New York City area. My dad is actually an alumnus of Niagara University, which is in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. And I just took after my dad of rooting for Niagara, the Purple Eagles, like a maniac as a kid. I kid you not, I think I was in 4th grade when I started on a daily basis checking, pre-social media, just checking the message board for Niagara basketball fans in the MAC conference. And so, their head coach when I was a kid, who's now the head coach at Hofstra, which would have been in the tournament this year, Joe Mahalik. It's very similar to Coach Coffman, where he's the type who, when I got to go to some games when they'd play in the New York City area, he, as a little kid, he'd let me sit on the bench and help the managers fill up the water cups. But anyway, I just bring that up because, my heart is in mid-major college basketball, and I'm really excited to have the chance to now be in a league like the Horizon League that, I think is just an awesome mid-major league, and can't wait for Purdue Fort Wayne to become a fixture in it.
All right, great, wonderful, man. And we're happy to have you as well. So, definitely. Definitely thank you again for coming on. That's going to wrap it up for us. As always, you can find episodes of the Horizon Roundtable at horizonroundtable.com. You can also find us wherever podcasts are available. We're everywhere, so subscribe, do that, and you can also pull us up on your Amazon or Google devices. And like I said, that's going to do it. And thank you all for listening.